Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, Alpha 323 continues in development. We take a closer look at all of the work that went into water for the next patch, plus we finally get much more information on what to expect when the personal hangars, freight elevators, and all of the many cargo updates come into the PU in a 3.23 point patch. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was taking a closer look at the changes to water rendering and physics simulation. Now, Water for 323 has had a ton of work done for it. Rendering, for example, gives it a realistic look to all bodies of water, and they have implemented the reflecting, the refraction of light with water, how each body of water may be either clear or murky, or somewhere in between depending on where it is. They have also added foam and worked to create a realistic effect as players walk through the water. So how it looks underneath the surface, fogging and so on, plus how the waterline looks across the player's visor, which, personally speaking, all of it does look astonishingly good. There is still a little room for improvement, I would say, of how the water and foam interacts with other aspects of things like rocks, but they have made great progress here and water is looking phenomenal. Now, next they speak about the water simulation. They wanted some next level visuals with anything that can interact with water, especially thrusters, and using the method they now use, players have the option to change in their graphical settings the number of regions that are visible, so we can basically adjust it based on our PC's capabilities. They have also created a system to detect when items are in or on the water and have the physics simulation act appropriately to what it is in the water, although that could be tweaked a little because it looks like pieces of ships are basically weightless. But this could be for things like ships, boxes, pieces of ships, players walking through the water, bullets, and anything else really, just helping to immerse the player in the experience. Next, they spoke about caustics, which is where the ocean surface is focusing sunlight onto areas close by, like on the seabed or upwards onto a vehicle, and again, this looks phenomenal. It really looks beautiful. And to finish off with, Wilhane says that the Planet Tech has got some really exciting things coming, and he can't wait to jump back into working on them. And I mean, last we heard for what is next after water and rivers was lava and roads, which could be the next things he moves on to. I don't know, because Planet Tech version 5 is in the works, so I'm just very excited to see what more is coming to planets and what more Wilhane can do for planets as well. But that was Inside Star Citizen, and although right now water has little to do with gameplay for the verse, in the future Cloud Imperium have stated that they want all kinds of gameplay surrounding water, be that on top of or underneath, just like we see with games like Subnautica, but also including boats and potentially submersibles as well. So a great episode, but let's move on. So this week's Star Citizen Live was a bit of a long one, with the rescheduled Q&A on cargo from the Inside Star Citizen a few weeks ago, that took a look at cargo, freight elevators, and the hangars. Now, as we know, these features are no longer coming in the initial 323 release, but a 323.x patch, be that 0.1, 0.2, shortly after the main release. And the head developer behind this feature, Chad, did address the reasoning behind the features not making it in for the initial 323 release, saying that they are very significant and impact many aspects of Star Citizen. For example, the design of the freight elevator and item bank UI and user experience needed updating to make them feel better, plus the hangar instancing and hangar transit flow had stability issues that if they were to just release it, it would be a very unplayable game due to how important these interconnecting systems and features are. It would basically impact everybody. And of course, they don't want that to happen. But he did say that even though it missed its targeted release, it is very, very close to coming. They are practically ready to go any minute once they have those edge cases fixed. He was also very disappointed that they didn't make the dates, but they need to ensure that the integrity of the live builds are the priority. And personally, I completely agree, it is the right choice. Of course, I was disappointed as well that it didn't make it in, but I am glad that it is not getting pushed back a whole new branch. But as it stands right now, there is no knowledge as to whether it's going to be before, during, or after Invictus, which is generally around late May. We will just have to wait and see when it comes. But as they said in the show, they don't want a repeat of 3.18. Now, onto the Q&A. The first question being, how will you prevent unwanted players from getting into our own personal hangars? Now, they say that there will be security for players entering your elevator to get into your hangar, although they never stated exactly what. But with the initial release of this feature, if someone not in your party enters your hangar, they will get a warning to leave before they get automatically teleported away. So you won't be able to shoot them in this initial rollout either, as you will be in an armistice zone, but in the future they want better security and less of a gamey experience. Now, this does mean that players could get into your hangar and grab something if they are quick enough to do so before getting teleported, but again, they will further flesh this system out and make sure that it is more robust in all areas. And it kind of makes sense. For now, while we wait for these other systems to come in, it isn't fail-safe by any means, but hopefully it will make it difficult for those wanting to abuse it. Next question is, how do party members get access to your hangar? And if you have someone in the party with you, they will be able to select your hangar from the elevator, and they can use the kiosk and item bank in your hangar as well if they want to, which is great, as this will really allow for much more multi-crew and teamwork, having people doing their own thing to get a single ship ready for launch. But if you are in a party with someone, you will basically see your own hangar and every other party member's hangar as well in the list of locations or hangars you can go to in an elevator. And again, this system will get further polished to counter potential issues, but that sounds pretty cool. Next question is, what happens if you buy a larger ship that is bigger than the hangar that you were initially allocated? So if you are unaware, the size of the hangar that you get allocated is based on the largest ship that you own in your fleet at the time of logging in. And so for the initial release, again, if you buy a new ship that is bigger, you won't get a bigger personal hangar, and you will have to use a public hangar to use that ship, which in a way are very similar to personal hangars, but things that you leave around in your public hangar will not persist once you leave that hangar, as it will get cleaned up with it being a public hangar and not your own. They did say though that if you go to a public hangar, you can drop off anything in the hangar anywhere you want, and things will persist there in that hangar even if you were to log out of the game and come back at another time. So your items, cargo, etc. will still persist, but only if you leave the hangar and fly away will that hangar then clean up everything and become a public hangar again. So it does sound like if you go to a location, be that a space station or landing zone, and you request a public hangar, so a place where you don't own a hangar there, it will allocate you this public hangar that is yours to use for as long as you want while you are there, even logging in and out of the PU. And only when you actively leave that location does the hangar clean up anything that you left, which is very nice and quite logical as well. So I do love that that is how it's going to work for the first iteration. It does sound confusing, but it does make perfect sense. It's as if you were allocated a public hangar for the duration of your stay. So a nice addition there. But they did go on to say that the items you leave behind, if they then get cleaned up in the future, they would like to get to a point where those items are not just lost forever, which will happen for the first release, so be careful not to leave anything in a public hangar if you are flying out of the hangar, for example. But in the future, they want to impound these items, and you will have to pay a fee to get them back. He did say, though, you will get a warning that items will go missing. But going back to the original question regarding the increase of the size, in the future, they have a whole pipeline planned for upgrading and renting hangars at other locations. So choosing one hangar and one only is just for the initial release. And in the future, we will be able to rent and buy hangars in-game, upgrade them, and expand on what we have however we want. And I will say, we will get access to more hangars that are part of our ship or package purchases, but again, not from the very start of it all. Next question, will players be able to access their own things inside your hangar? And yes, they will. They will actually only be able to access their own stuff initially, but eventually they do want players to be able to access your inventory or any party member's inventory, which they actually said they are working on now, but it just isn't going to be ready. Now this is great, especially for multi-crew, and having players all working together to get ships ready for a mission, being able to ask another player to open your inventory to get another box if you're busy doing something else. Now, he does say that there is still a lot of security and authorization systems required to make it more robust, which of course makes sense, but for the initial release, any player can access their own inventory from anyone's hangar, just not the hangar owner's inventory at this time. Next question, how many home hangars can a player have, and can they change the location of their hangar after it's been chosen initially? Now he says, for the initial release, which seems to be the running theme, it will be just the one personal hangar to start with, and no, you won't be able to change them later down the line in 3.2.3. Although I will say, I think doing a character reset would allow you to change it, just like it can change your spawn location, but there will be no changing in-game once you've initially picked your hangar location. And in the future, absolutely yes, but do make sure that you choose wisely once this feature comes into the Alpha 3.2.3 branch, as that will be your hangar location for the duration of that build. Next question, are there plans to allow personal hangars that are not at just major landing zones? And again, yes, eventually, anywhere that there are hangars, Grimhex, space stations, or landing zones will allow for personal hangars, but it will just be the 4 main landing zones to begin with, being New Babbage on Microtech, Lorville on Hurston, Orison on Crusader, and Area 18 on ArcCorp. Next question, is there an occupancy limit inside the hangars? And no, there is no limit. You can invite as many people around as you want. You can have a whole server inside. There is no reason why that wouldn't be allowed. Next question, if a player is in their ship inside their personal hangar and logs out in the ship bed, where will they wake up when they log back in? Now, you will wake up in your hab for this release, but they do want to revisit logging in and out, with the hangars in particular, which will come later, and how logging in and out will work, and they are thinking much broader about it, like hubs and bases and hangars and ships, and how that will all work. So I know there's a lot of talk going around based on what Chad said about this fear that he is not going to allow us to log out in our ships as we do now. He is more intending that it's going to be bigger and better and broader rather than more restricting. So don't worry, they will have all kinds of options available. He's talking about expanding on that, not restricting it. Next question, can we equip weapons in our personal hangars despite the armistice zone? And he says you won't be able to draw a firearm and shoot around inside the hangars, but you can use the tractor beams inside the hangar to move ship items around, like weapons and components. In the future, each location will have different rules depending on the location, and we will freely be able to draw a weapon, but there will be other restrictions like security, rather than it being artificially restricted. So we will be able to equip ship weapons in our ships, but we won't be able to draw a FPS weapon. Next question, what does this all mean for our OG hangar flare? Can we use them to decorate our personal hangars? And unfortunately, no. The old hangar flare props are going to need to be updated over time, as right now, they did say that a developer or prop developer, as they finish work and waits for their next sprint to come up, they are going through some of the old stuff and updating it to make it work how the game works now. But for 3.23's initial release, they won't be available, but they have been creating furniture that we can buy, and certain locations will offer different furniture items like couches, and you will be able to buy them and decorate your hangar how you please, which is wonderful to hear, and I'll certainly be buying all sorts of stuff, traveling around and picking up different pieces of furniture and decorating my hangar as and when I see fit. Can't wait. Next question, how does manual or auto-loading work at non-hangar locations like scrapyards, outposts, and so on? Now, auto-loading and unloading won't be an option at locations that don't have hangars, and this is an intention. For places like outposts, you won't be buying or selling vast amounts of cargo each time, only in smaller amounts. And one big change that is coming with this update is that you will have certain stock available which comes in, say, predetermined box sizes, and locations like outposts will trade in smaller volumes and box sizes, with the idea being that you manually load it. So large ships are not intended to be coming and going from outposts and planetside locations of a small scale. And they want to establish more structure to the hauling profession, with each location serving different roles. They want various reasons to go to other locations in-game, and various reasons for using various ships for what they're intended for. So rewarding good decision making in regards to picking the right ship, picking the right location, and then picking the right trade route, and so on. Obviously the LEO stations, they're there for big ships, will support the auto-loading and unloading with large scale routes, with these locations dealing in large box types as well. The small outposts will have freight elevators attached to the landing pad though, so your cargo will not have to move far, and you can just use a tractor beam or maybe a small vehicle type device to move your cargo around. And you will be able to move large amounts of cargo by hand if you want to, but at locations like landing zones. And this will save you money, but you might want to get some help to do so. And loading it properly, choosing the right size boxes, will be beneficial as well. So essentially making things make sense like in the real world. I do love the sound of all this, allowing players to really get involved with the role and what we want to do, how we want to do it. So making decisions based on our knowledge and our ability, and then maybe learning from our mistakes, giving plenty of choices to the players. And as expected, when these features do come in for a 323 point patch, it will redefine not just how players interact with their ships and items, but for haulers, finally a proper system to support the cargo hauling career. Now, they did also mention that the auto-loading timers will be balanced over time as they roll them out to make sure that it feels right, and they want it to all have an important trade-off and encourage players to make smart decisions. Like, for example, you don't want to be buying 700 single SEU-sized boxes and expect the loading timers to equal that of loading 700 32 SEU containers. It will be logically calculated. Now, the next question is mass of cargo still planned to affect ship performance? And it is still planned, but it won't be for the initial release, as they still need to figure out some important physics issues, like how boxes and items contribute to mass when they are dropped inside ships, which will bring an advantage, they say, to using cargo grids versus just putting stuff anywhere. So as you would expect, a full ship of cargo will move slower and be less agile, and you might want to spread that cargo around your ship to balance out the physics and so on. So lots of gameplay aspects to come from this when the time comes, but it's probably a little way off yet. Next question, when will we be able to attach anything to the cargo grids, like we saw in Inside Star Citizen a while back? Now, this is coming, but they still need to do more work for it, so again, not the initial release. There is a lot to test to see what the limitations are and what can and cannot attach. Next question, what is the future of cargo decks? Now, he does say that the cargo decks were designed at a time when they didn't fully understand the scope of the cargo gameplay loop, and they will need to figure out what is the best idea for them. And personally speaking, I was actually quite shocked to hear this. I think it makes perfect sense that the cargo decks serve each planet as their sort of main dock for import and export, as you see with docks in the real world. For example, if resources are mined and gathered from one planet and then refined and flown to a cargo deck to then be exported to other locations throughout the verse by big haulers. And for importing, resources arriving at the cargo decks, they get stored and then players come along and pick up the various scales of boxes, delivering the goods to the planetary or moon locations like outposts, settlements, or players requesting items. To me, they have always made sense for the grand scheme of the economy, and I'm sure this has been mentioned before, so hopefully they can still utilize them in that way, maybe acting as space-based distribution centers but on a bigger scale than the ones on the planet. Anyway, we'll obviously have to hear what they decide here. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, next question is, what happens if we bring contraband or stolen goods into our personal hangars? Now, for the first release, if you just stole someone's cargo and then stored it, you won't get arrested or fined, but you won't be able to sell them as it's stolen. But for hauling missions, players will be incentivized to actually deliver the goods rather than take them and sell them on. For example, the value of stolen cargo will be much less than delivering the goods and finishing the job, not to mention the reputation hit. They also want to allow players to be able to sell stolen goods rather than just having stuff that you can't get rid of. So in my opinion, they really just need a fence, which was on the roadmap at one point, but a place where you can offload stolen goods for, less cost or less value of its original value. And I do hope that as reputation or hostility-based reputation comes along, being able to trade with the gangs would be a great way to sell these goods and a great reward for completing missions for them, gaining reputation, and earning even higher rates for what you sell. But that is just my thoughts. Hopefully they take a route similar. Next question, will storage containers get more variation, or will we be able to change their colours, names, and labels as it gets confusing knowing which box has what? Now this is something that they do have plans for, again not for 323, but tinting, labelling, naming and such, so expect something as they want us to be able to create a way of differentiating between them. Next question, how much total SEU can a freight elevator hold? And there are 4 different elevator sizes, being small, medium, large, and extra large, but he didn't want to speak to the exact volumes, but they are different, and this is to encourage players to upgrade their hangars as time goes on, plus vehicles of different sizes needs to be called as well, like tonks versus rocks and so on. Next question, will we be able to call up multiple vehicles simultaneously on a single vehicle lift? And no, not for the initial release, it will just be a single vehicle, so if it's a ship, if you request another ship, it will then take that one away and bring you the new one. Again, something for the future though. Is there any other location besides the personal hangars where the ship lifts are being used to deliver vehicles to you? And no, not at the moment. And then the final question is, if I was to trap a Copian inside my ship and then bring it back to my personal hangar, will it persist there for me as a pet? And they said yes, it should persist, but they haven't tested it. Now I will say that when I got that Copian inside my cargo bay, it did despawn, and currently there seems to be quite a high rate at which they despawn. I remember shooting a couple of them, walking away over a small hill and then coming back and they were gone. This was in earlier builds, I'm not sure if they persist more now, but we will certainly have to give that a go. Anyway, that was a very interesting round of questions, and a certainly needed round of questions, and as it seems, when these features do come into the burst, most of what was asked won't be with the initial implementation, and will require multiple iterations over the duration of time. So it will certainly refine as time goes on, but even out of the gate, it's going to be a game changer for all players, especially haulers. But I loved that episode, can't wait to see these features come along, and hopefully as soon as possible after the 323 live release. Now, next week's Inside Star Citizen is with the Arena Commander team, talking further about the changes to 323, and next week's Star Citizen Live will be with Bone from the UI team, talking about the star map, interior map, and mobiGlas, answering our questions from Inside Star Citizen. But let us move on. So also this week, new Galactopedia entries were included for all of the lore buffs out there, including myself. Plus, the roadmap was updated, which unfortunately revealed the news about the delay to personal hangars, freight elevators, and all of the cargo changes for 323. I have covered this in a separate video that I will link below, but thankfully they are not pushed back to a brand new patch and will come in a 323 point patch, be that 0.1, 0.2. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.